Sure.
Okay.
And Marianne, you already introduced yourself. I already introduced myself. I'm just going to go the way on the screen. Denise?
Hi, everybody. I'm Denise, woman in long-term recovery, woman of color. I'm the assistant program director for MOAR. I'm very excited to be here. Tatiana, hello. I'm so excited that you're here and can't wait to hear you speak tonight. We've been waiting for a while, so I'm excited that you're here tonight. Thank you.
And Daniel?
I'm Daniel Davis. I work at Bay Cove Community Health Services. I'm a peer support coordinator, and I was excited to be here. I'm excited here, got an invitation, and looking forward to hearing you.
Welcome, Daniel.
And then we have Scotty.
Thank you, Daniel, for accepting my invitation. Sunshine Scotty, truly grateful to be part of MOAR and the Metro West Regional Coordinator. And I believe, Tatiana, we met last year at Roxbury Community College. And
Yes, I knew you were familiar.
I'm so glad you're here to speak today. And it was a joy to meet you. And I'm really with everybody. I was so impressed, and I wasn't alone with all the wonderful work that you're doing in the community. Recovery is real. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Julie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Foster. I am the new program director for the Recovery Education Collaborative, taking the baton from Jill O'Brien. Very happy to be here. I've actually had this on my schedule for a long time, so I'm happy that we're here.
Glad to have you, Julie.
Thank you.
And we have Hannah.
Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah. I work for MOAR doing communications and operations, and I'm excited to hear you speak, Tatiana.
And Marshall.
Hi, everybody. Marshall, grateful Boston Regional Coordinator for MOAR, and I am happy to be here.
And we have a 617 number.
Star
There he
Any
is.
takers?
6 to unmute, right? Star 6 to unmute if you're on the phone calling in.
I think that might be Daryl.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Darrell Wright, and I'm a recovery coach at MOAR, and also with us in tonight's meeting.
I'm Mandy. I'm a recovery coach for MOAR also.
Welcome, and thank you for coming, Tatiana.
And we have Kirsten.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kirsten Puccio, and I am the Central Mass Regional Coordinator for MOAR. And Tatiana, thank you so much for being here. I am super excited to hear you tonight. So thank you so much for being here.
And we have Julie H.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm a friend of Denise, and actually MOAR was one of the first places years and years and years ago when I first tried to go into recovery that my mom reached out to. It was when Joanne led it. I don't know if she's still there. I think her name was Joanne. And I'm also a mom in recovery. So I just wanted to participate. Thank you for sharing your story.
Very nice. I hardly ever run into 3 Julies in one.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Yeah, I love it. So MOAR's mission is to organize.
Leah's here, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry, Leah.
Oh, no, it's okay because I'm gonna go after you anyhow to introduce Tatiana. So
Okay, all
I'll
right.
lay low.
Okay.
Very good.
So, like I said, Tatiana, my name is Julie Bunch. I am the Northeast Regional Coordinator for MOAR and co-chair of the DEI. And our mission statement is to organize recovery individuals, families, and friends into a collective voice to educate the public about the value of recovery from alcohol and other addictions. And then we do have a DEI statement. Massachusetts Organization for Addiction Recovery wants to be a voice for all people seeking the benefits of recovery. We are committed to doing the work necessary to address the struggles and inequity diverse groups of people face while seeking recovery services. Systematic racism, discrimination, prejudice, and bias have been deeply ingrained in the history of the American healthcare system. MOAR is committed to work to create a collective voice for those seeking recovery for all people who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and oppressed. And discriminated.
Thank you, Julie. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Randolph. I'm the DEI chair for MOAR. And like many of you here, we saw Tatiana do a blazing, grazing, wonderful, fabulous job at the Boston Medical Center Conference on Addiction. And so we have been trying to, get her to speak on this DEI series for quite some time, but she's been very busy, understandably so. Tatiana brings a wealth of experience in terms of looking at life through her own circle, her own vision, through her own eyes and her life experiences, which led her to open up a nonprofit that addresses inequities in terms of how people are treated that are involved with DCF. And so she's brave and brazen, and so we're very blessed to have her on our side, helping to be the voice for those who are the voiceless and who have lost their way. Tatiana has picked up her baton and her armor, and she is ready to fight and advocate and provide information to anybody who is in need. So I won't take up more of your time, Tatiana. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us tonight. And the floor is yours.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for such warm welcomes. It's really nice to see some familiar faces already, and it's nice to connect with other folks. Leah, what exactly, like, did you want to ask me questions and I answer?
So when we spoke the other day, you had a really interesting story. You were talking about advocating for your brother. And I think that is a great story to share. And also, I guess maybe starting with a little bit how you got involved with doing this work, and then the story about your brother is really, really interesting. But yours is as well. So I would say start with you and go to your brother, and by the time you finish that, it'll be done.
Okay, so to keep it a little short, I will start by saying this. About 20 years now, no, I would say like 25 years now. 25 years ago, I didn't know what foster home I would end up in. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was a survivor of domestic violence, and I was involved with the Department of Children and Families as an adult on the other end, which I ended up actually aging out of DCF, right? So they were in return, they were my parents, right? I was a ward of the state. So now, as a survivor of DV 10 years ago, homeless and pregnant, I had to figure things out while I had to navigate being policed by the Department of Children and Families and not provided with the services that I needed. Fast forward about 4 years ago, I found myself, for the past 13 years, I've been navigating a court system to try to keep myself safe and my son safe from our abuser. 4 years ago, I finally got the courage to run away. I say run away and get away and seek safety. The proper word that they said is to seek safety, right? But I fled, and I'll say I fled because it's fight or flight. There was no court system that was keeping us safe. There was no court system that was even providing us with services. Not even my son's father, who in return had also childhood trauma, and they dropped the ball on him as well. So I found myself 4 years ago still coming back to cooperate with the court system and let them know that I just needed to remain safe. Department of Children and Families was involved. They found my son's father neglectful. They found him neglectful, but again, did not provide any services for him, not for my family. They, in fact, made me take DV classes as if I had an issue of abusing somebody. And they did not assist me in my court case. So I started realizing how the systems are not communicating with each other. They're not fit really to really keep children safe, in the sense of it's a bureaucracy. It's just not designed to keep us safe. And especially if you don't have money and the resources. So when I fled, I was able to, find my way to come back from North Carolina, which I was making way less money. But the judge told me if I didn't come back within 30 days, while I was showing her videos of the day before my son's father chasing me down and me having to run away from him trying to crash into me. And I had a violation of restraining order. I had a police report, I had a video. I was showing her that my life was in danger, and she still refused. She told me I needed to move back to the Commonwealth, that it didn't matter. I would have to go to a DV shelter, despite the fact that my son has always had his own bedroom. He had a certain lifestyle that he didn't deserve to have to come back to be forced into visits with someone that didn't even have visits at the time. He actually had no visits due to his behavior of constantly violating restraining orders. So I told her financially I couldn't come back. I asked DCF for help. They said they could not help me. So I found myself lost in this court system and dealing with, still dealing with DCF, but again, still not finding any direction. So I started organizing. I started asking people, what's going on? Like, how can we change this? This is crazy. Like, I remember being in DCF, and I remember my mom fighting for me and doing everything she had to do to get us back. She did get us back, but then lost us again because she struggled with substance use. So fast forward, I began organizing, and I started doing research. And when I started doing research, I realized that it wasn't just me that this was happening to. This was happening to so many other mothers, especially survivors of domestic violence. This was happening to mothers that were trying to get off substances, right? Like, this was happening to so many mothers, and the Department of Children and Families that's supposed to provide services to families, right, and keep families together. In fact, they actually rather separate families and punish families that have intergenerational trauma. And I started realizing that a lot of these parents, right, they were once in DCF as children, which was DSS when I was in it. So they're just, the ball just continues to be dropped and dropped, and nobody was advocating for parents. Everybody was, you saw that there was services for like children. Everybody's like, poor foster children, let's donate to the foster children. But nobody was feeding parents. They were just, they made these mistakes and they had to go through action plans, jump through hoops, and the goal would still be adoption. Then I started finding out that they were illegally testing, without people's consent, testing mothers that were exposed to substances. And this is how I connected with Mass General Hospital, Dr. David Zavita, around the, this whole not being allowed to test pregnant women, because what do? They come, although scientifically it's proven that a child, when you're able to do skin to skin and you're able to breastfeed your baby, that will heal the baby quicker than just separating that baby from the mother. So it's like DCF, I realized that they go against expertise. A lot of them they're not trained to make the decisions that they're trained to. They downplay experts' treatment plans, such as psychologists and doctors. And, I was like, we have to do something about this. So like I said, I began organizing weekly with other parents, which turned into protests, which turned into supporting legislation that would change these laws. I also realized that in my personal fight, when I started having eyes on my case, I started organizing people and filling up the courtroom. The judge started changing as I would come. Long story short, a year ago, I was able to successfully regain custody of my son. And I'm still dealing with the residual effects of that trauma. I was left to have to navigate and get resources on my own. When they separated him from me, they didn't give him any, it happened suddenly and very traumatically. It wasn't like, it didn't happen how when I got custody back, they did like a reunification plan. So I didn't just get custody right away. We had to do therapy, which is good. It's appropriate, right? But they should have did that when they took him from me too. They had to do 1 week with me, 1 week with dad, but dad was not even showing up for weeks. He was trying to punish me. And there was nothing I could do. I still had to pay him child support while I was actually financially, physically taking care of my child. So I started realizing that as the years went by, right, and I was literally simultaneously fighting for my own child, I was helping other parents fight for their children, and I was advocating for them between attorneys, because 97%, and I was sharing this with Leah the other day, so 97% of my advocacy actually happens between attorneys. And this is something that many people know, many people don't know. If you are a person of color or under a certain income level and you get a public, appointed a public counsel, which is CPCS, a lot of the times they don't do their job correctly, unfortunately. And most of the time I have to advocate for attorneys to meet with clients ahead of time, not the day before court, not calling them the day before court and saying, hey, we have court tomorrow. And you just have to trust me, right? Like I'm filing these motions. Many times there's attorneys that don't explain the processes, which the law does not really apply to the law, and then real life situations, it never makes sense. And for people that are dealing with trauma, that can show up in so many ways. And a lot of the times people are being judged because of how they're responding. Oh, you can't be an angry mother. You can't be angry that I came and I took your child from you when you're being abused and you're not doing anything to this child. All you're doing is trying to provide a loving, stable environment for this child. You're trying to break generational curses. They're not looking at that, right? So they're just seeing that I am upset. I am anxious because this man could kill my baby. He can kill my baby trying to get at me and trying to hurt me. Like these are all the things and the fears that's going on with me because I don't know what his intentions are with my child, right? Because only the person that deals with that abuse knows all the things that were said in that relationship, right? And there's some things that the judge doesn't know. And I don't think it's fair for survivors to have to relive these things. So I started to realize that the more I showed up, the more pushback I would get from certain attorneys. Now, I started meeting with CPCS monthly. So about 3 years ago, I started meeting with CPCS, which is the public counsel, and we would meet and talk about the complaints that we had, right? The things that they were not doing right and the things that we did not understand, and we were demanding zealous advocacy. And we got a lot of pushback because it's very political in Massachusetts. It is very political, and they know that what DCF is doing is wrong. It's illegal. They come to people's homes and they come in there and they coerce parents to come in their home, strip search kids sometimes, investigate, right, as the police. So we refer to DCF as the family police because that is what they are. And everything that you say will be used against you, right? So these are the things that people don't understand. We have a Fourth Amendment right that no government official should be allowed into your home without a warrant. And DCF is a government official. And everything that is said to them will be used against you in court. And they will build whatever narrative it is that they need to do whatever they want to do. If they don't like you, if they think that you're, they think that you have mental health issues because of the way that you're presenting, because there's one moment in your life that they come to your door, and anybody, you're coming to their home and telling them that you want to see their children, or you're investigating an allegation of neglect, right, or abuse. And 80% of these cases are cases of neglect, which is misconflated with poverty. If you actually read the definition in CAPTA, which is the Child Abuse Prevention Act, it actually talks about food insecurity, clothes insecurity. These are all things of neglect. So why are we not providing families with what they need instead of separating them and paying foster families, which foster families, they're more likely to be in danger? Because let's not talk about that data. And let's not talk about the data that goes unreported, because I'm data that went unreported. I experienced abuse. I experienced sexual trafficking while in DCF, never at home. And all of that went unreported. So they don't talk about the dangers of taking a child out of a quote unquote neglectful situation and putting them in a actually more serious abusive situation. Right now, I'm dealing with parents that are trying to get their children safe out of abusive foster homes, right? So these are the things that I experience on a daily. And to talk about what Leah's talking about, so the situation with my brother. So my brother also grew up in DCF. He also had some behavior issues in response to the trauma that we've witnessed, right, as children. He's 1 year older than me, so it hit him a little different, right? He struggles right now with substances. He struggles with a little more things than me. But one thing he's an amazing father, right? And when I say substances, I call it a substance because it's marijuana, but it's a coping mechanism, right? That he's had to learn to deal with the trauma that his misdiagnosis of ADHD, like so many misdiagnoses and not the right treatment. Especially back then, I think that now we have a little more information around that. But my brother has a son. He has a daughter and a son. He has custody of his daughter. His son, he actually had custody of him. Well, not custody, but he had him for a year because his mother, the child's mother, was suffering with substance, like deep, like serious, other serious substances. And she said, I can't do it. I can't do this. Like, take him. So my brother had him. We're dealing with a situation where the grandmother is a white woman. And she and her husband are very racist. They are very racist to my brother. They don't acknowledge him as a father. They actually petition the court for guardianship. So the judge literally, so the reason why I started advocating for my brother is because he had court dates to take paternity tests. The mother was supposed to go and voluntarily put him on the birth certificate, which she never did. So he continued to fight, simultaneously still fighting other things, right, on a daily, having to go to court, having to take time off of work to go to court, losing money, going to court. And this judge literally changed one court date from the 24th. It was scheduled for the 24th, and he changed it to the 23rd. That is illegal. You need to give proper notice to somebody if you're changing a court date. And it was just unethical in every way, because usually if a judge is going to change a court date, they'll change it to a further court date, not to the day before. So he goes the 24th, and the judge was like, well, I changed the court date. It was yesterday. So this paternity test is basically dismissed, which gives ammunition for the guardianship case, because now my brother, even though he's an interested party, he has no leverage, because technically on record, he's not paternally the dad. So the guardianship case goes on. The judge actually gives permanent guardianship. So which by then, when a person, and people don't know this, when a person has a guardianship case in the family and probate court, you are entitled to an attorney if you are indigent. So if you cannot afford an attorney and your income level reaches a certain threshold, you actually qualify for an attorney. But people don't tell you this because in family and probate court, you're not entitled to get a lawyer. The only time you're entitled to get a lawyer by the state is if you have DCF involvement. Let's say there's a 51B. So a 51B comes after a 51A is found to have reasonable, probable cause that the abuse allegation or the neglect allegation actually occurred. So this is another situation where you then can request an attorney. Do you know that we filed a motion to request an attorney and to request a motion for reconsideration? The judge denied the attorney. My brother filed it that day. He denied him the attorney as if it was not his right. And then I had to refile. I actually went in there and I refiled the motion. He didn't have an attorney at this time. So I filed for the motion for an attorney and I filed for the motion for reconsideration. And I named the law. He ended up he granted the motion for reconsideration, and I ended up having to call CPCS and say, listen, this is not okay. My brother needs an attorney. And luckily, because of the advocacy that I do and the relationships that I have in the CPCS office, they were able to appoint him an attorney and a great attorney. But even this great attorney, so this attorney is a 5-star attorney. She is a 5-star attorney, but she's a private bar. So to anybody that doesn't know, so CPCS has staff counsels, but then they also have private bar. So the private bar don't necessarily work for CPCS. They just get paid through CPCS as consultants. So they don't have anyone supervising them. And we know that attorneys hold this certain power dynamic, right? Especially when you're your own boss, you don't work for the state, you could do whatever you want to do. So this attorney, she got on the case and she's a very needed attorney. She's very busy. I'm grateful that they were able to get my brother an attorney, but I've been running into many problems with her. And luckily I know the information that I know because I'm able to advocate for my brother. But it doesn't come easy. It comes with a lot of pushback, right? But had I not been on his case, it would not have been progressing as it is. And actually, it has been delayed some ways because the attorney, I think that initially, when I came on, I didn't come on saying like, oh yeah, I'm his peer advocate. Like I came on like, I'm here, representing my brother. I'm here. And she asked me what I did. And she's like, oh, what do you do? She was like, because I don't ever have, like somebody called me personally to get this case. Like, what is it that you do? And I explained to her what it was that I did for other parents. So I don't think she was correlating that, yeah, that's what I do. And this is my brother, but this is what I'm also doing for him. And one of the things that I do is hold attorneys accountable, right? And make sure that they're explaining certain processes and communicating, court dates on time. So she received correspondence from court and did not communicate it to my brother in time, to the point where now he has court this Friday and his case is now being delayed. He hasn't been able to get a paternity test because he was supposed to apply for child support services, which she did not even she didn't even explain the steps. Like my attorney, it went through the whole application process with me with the child support. She even called child support. Like my attorney is a zealous attorney, the attorney that I have. But this attorney, it's like when you're a hot commodity and you have all these cases, it's like you just do whatever you want when you want to do it. And unfortunately, that's not okay. It's not okay that we treat parents that may not be able to articulate themselves correctly, that may not understand the law, that may not understand their rights, that may not understand certain processes of the things that I'm privy to because of the relationships that I have with CPCS attorneys and constantly working with CPCS attorneys, because there are CPCS attorneys that understand the parent advocate model. It's actually being funded right now. So Massachusetts got $2 million for early advocacy. So if you ever know a parent that is dealing with a DCF investigation, I have some resources that you can use, and you can refer parents to speak to attorneys. They can refuse to speak to DCF workers until they speak to an attorney. So they have the right to speak to an attorney. A lot of parents don't know this. A lot of people don't know this, but they have a right. The problem is when we're coming from poor communities, we can't afford attorneys, right? We can't afford to call an attorney, not even for an hour, right? So this is an initiative that now, through zealous advocacy, through my advocacy and other people that have been advocating, now there's this funding, but again, they're putting this funding in the state, which I'm advocating that it be put into grassroots organizations, because most of the time we have to advocate between attorneys and clients. So it's like, yeah, you're giving the money, but are you putting the money in the right place? Because the power dynamics of an attorney and an advocate, imagine if I worked in the CPCS office and I'm over here advocating to my boss that she needs to do her job. Like that's kind of like, it's a conflict of interest. You know what I'm saying? It's a conflict of interest. So right now I'm in the process of being put on their vendor list. So anytime an attorney gets on the case, they can file a motion to have me added. But this is something very new. And until attorneys don't see the benefit in also having a parent advocate, which the benefit in them having me is that I've been through this experience, I lived it, but I also grew patience. I grew to understand the law. I grew to understand strategy, right? I had to understand that I had to separate my trauma and the real world. And that's very hard to do. It is very hard to do because you're the one who has to wake up without your child every night. You're the one that has to deal with, the punitive policing with DCF having to facilitate supervised visitations and be, behind your neck and critiquing your parenting. When we come from different cultures, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of racism and biases, and not even just from white people. That people of color have these biases, right? There's many days that I have to check my biases when I work with my parents because I don't agree with certain parenting styles, right? That's not my business. My business is to help this parent, to try to guide this parent, coach this parent, and show them this is what happened for me. This is how I got my child back. This is what worked and this is what did not work. Even though these are natural emotions, that you be upset, that you be frustrated, that you be angry at the people that are sitting here punishing you and don't understand what you're going through and are miscommunicating your reaction as mental health conditions when it's really PTSD. It is PTSD from dealing with not only, for me, it was me dealing with my abuser, then having to deal with an abusive court system, to having to deal with abusive and punitive social workers trying to judge me and tell me how I should be doing things and what I should be doing, and making me feel like I'm wrong, when in all reality is you guys are wrong because you can't erase the fact that my child's father is his father and he has these rights. So unless you're going to come up to court with me and advocate that he gets services, or you guys have the money, they have the money for it, right? Why are we not putting the money into keeping families together? Why are we so quick to punish people? So that's really what I do. There's so much more that I do right now. Currently, I'm working on a bill that's called Family Miranda, where this is a right. It's already a constitutional right, which is the Fourth Amendment right. But we want to be able to put some teeth into the to that right and hold DCF accountable if they're not advising people of their rights. So when they come to your door or when they open up an investigation, they do not tell you, you don't have to talk to me. I don't have a warrant. You don't have to let me in your home. You have the right to speak to an attorney. And matter of fact, here's the attorney's number, right? Here's the free legal, the legal aids that you can call, which is very hard because they're oversaturated because there's only so many of them, but they do exist. And we're working on trying to expand that so that, unfortunately, it shouldn't have to expand, because I don't believe in continuously having a fund, because the more that we fund these systems, the more power that we're giving, right, for them to operate. But unfortunately, where Massachusetts stands, I think the most important thing is to get people equipped and families equipped. And just like when you're being arrested, you are told you have the right to remain silent, because everything that you will say can be used and held against you, especially as a person of a minority person, a person that comes from an underserved community, whether that's Black, brown, poor, indigenous. It's happening to all of us. If you don't have the resources to get an attorney, you can be victimized. And this can happen to anybody. This has happened to people at middle class level too. The only difference is most of the time when you have the resources, right, you can fly your mother out to come take temporary custody of your child, right? You can get money for an attorney that's going to do the job because you're paying them, versus a public defender that you're not paying, that's getting paid, I want to say, starting at $60 an hour. I think that's where they start in Massachusetts, $60 an hour. You know, they're burnt out. And a lot of them don't understand where we come from. They don't understand the trauma. They don't understand how to work with us. And this is why it's important that parent advocates do exist, because we're that voice. We're the voice for the voiceless and the powerless. I'm kind of like what you guys do in recovery, you know, with the recovery coaches. My uncle's a recovery coach. So I think that we're very much needed. I think that lived experience is not something that you can buy. You can try to teach it as much as you want, but you cannot duplicate it in any way. It is something that comes with me every single day when I show up for these clients. It is something that I wake up with, because I have literally walked in these parents' shoes, not the same exact shoes, but very similar. And I felt the pains that it is and the scrutiny. And then my concern is for people that are under, like, I understand the privy that I have now too. I'm no longer in the place that I was before, because now I have a certain type of level of education. I have a certain etiquette that I know. I speak a certain language now because I've had to learn through navigating the system for so long. But when I advocate for those that can't. So, and I'll say, for example, the legislation that we're passing, Texas passed this legislation, but they added that you can record. And the reason why I don't want to add that into this legislation in Massachusetts is because it can be very harmful. When you are in a compromise, in a situation like that, you are in distress. That is a moment of distress. You can say the wrong things, and that one moment could be held against you in court, right? And then not to think about parents that are dealing with depression, maybe dealing with hoarding, right? And you're recording their home, that can be used against them. And it doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have their kids, right? Like, we need to stop moving from that standpoint. So I don't think about, oh yeah, just myself. Yeah, I would love to record. It would actually work in my favor because I know how to advocate for myself. I would love to record, but that's not the case for all of us. So when we make decisions and family matters, when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to bills, we have to have a wholesome approach. And that's why we have a group of parents with lived experience that come and share what their perspective is, because I don't always have it right. And I'm not always going to look at a different perspective because I may not have lived that. So that's kind of what we do here. It's important that we continue to have parent advocates between attorneys, between DCF workers. They lie a lot. So I get on email chains. I was just doing that prior to getting on this meeting. I was responding to an email chain, making sure that it was being properly documented, and that I was present for the next meeting, because they were trying to exit me off of the email chain and not be a part of certain meetings and isolate. They wanted to isolate my client because he does not, he's getting tired of them playing these games with them. And if you think about it, I like to educate people, to let people know, and I'll wrap up because I've been going. But these, just like the police lie, we have corruption in police officers, and because of social media and like TikTok and all these things now, these things have been brought to the light. But these are things that we've been experiencing in our communities for decades. It's just now coming to the light, right? And the same thing with DCF workers. They're not here. I'm not going to say there's a very few. And when I say that they're not here to help, I'm not talking about the ones that actually came in with good intentions, right? That graduated as social workers and really wanted to come and save children, right? I'm talking about the much larger system, which is 80% of children in care are being removed due to poverty-related issues. That's a problem. And when we have DCF workers creating false narratives so that they can meet their quotas because their supervisor told them that they need a certain amount of removals by the end of the week. Because if we look at CAPTA and ASFA, both of these laws is what's funding the systems, right? So instead of using that money towards foster care, we need that money to be in our communities, to stay in families. And at the end of the day, DCF, they say they're here to help. They're the family police. That's what they are. And that is like, there's no discussion, because if you look at foster care, and I'll drop right here. I know I said I was going to drop it, but I want you to look at this. Foster care is not only a pipeline of prison, but foster care in prison, being locked up, and being in foster care is the same thing. They both have designated time for visitation, right? They both have oversight at visits. They both change from, you either change from foster home to foster home, group home to group home, cell to cell, with the bag, right? With the plastic bag, no dignity. You also have a certain time to eat. You have a certain time that you can speak to your parents and family. When you reintegrate into society, you're being paroled back to your family or your community. Or sometimes you're not being, when your parents face termination of parental rights, which now it can be between 15 months to a year. Imagine trying to get somebody clean in 15 months and do all the things that DCF is requiring of them. And then they're facing a termination of parental rights and they have no idea what they're facing. And a lot of the times they're being coerced to sign over their rights by their own attorneys, because these attorneys don't understand what addiction is. They don't understand mental health. They don't need to. It's not a requirement for them. So this is why what you all do is very important, and what I do is important, because we can't allow the system to dictate, and we have to be the voice to change the narrative and to humanize these parents, because I know my mother loves me to death. I decided to stay in the system when I was 14. I wanted to, for whatever reason. If I knew what I knew now, I would have never stayed in the system. I was exposed to things that I was never exposed to at home. The life I lived at home compared to the life I lived in a group home, in several foster homes, the things that I was exposed to, I was touched by foster brothers, right? I was exposed to many, many things, substances that I wasn't exposed to because my mother didn't play that at home. I never slept out at home. So I think that what we all do is very important. And I hope that after this conversation that you guys will reach out to me if you ever have any families that are ever in need. When it comes to emergencies, I'm always available. Like if somebody has an investigation right there, I'm available. And I also have attorneys that I can get people in contact with. And I can guide parents through the investigation process. But the important part is catching it earlier, sooner than later, so that they don't incriminate themselves. Thank you for listening.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you, Tatiana.
You're welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Does anyone have questions?
Tatiana, can you can you put your information in the chat, or do you want us to send it out to everybody on this call? Because I know you're in a car or driving or something, right?
Yeah, so I wonder, so I can give you my so I give my personal number, like when it comes to work, I give you my personal number, but there's also a separate number that I give if a client like wants to call it. So I can share that after, I mean, via email. And is everybody on the same email chain?
Yeah, I think we can
Or I can
actually
do it right
we can
now.
send your email out from here, right, Hannah?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about it. We'll take care of it.
Okay.
Scott has a question.
Yes,
Go
first,
ahead.
I just want to thank you, Tatiana, for turning your incredible pain into incredible passion, and for all the work you're doing to make the systems change, and for shining the light on all the things that people are doing people dirty, and like taking advantage of people without resources. It's not equitable, it's not fair, and the work that you're doing is making a difference. And my question for you is, when is the movie coming out? We need to make the movie about Tatiana's journey of from all that to triumph, from tragedy to triumph.
I'm definitely working on writing a book. There is a documentary that I'm a part of. It's actually called Broken. I can put the link in the chat. I'm a part of it, and I talk about my journey on there and how I started organizing. I go into depth with certain things, but you'll also be able to see other people's stories, right? That like have experienced similar things and have dealt with these injustices. And it's shedding a light into the broken child welfare, family policing system. For purposes, they call it child welfare system, but I don't give it that, because what I do is true child welfare. I think what we do is true child welfare when we're providing families with what they need, and we're uplifting parents and not throwing them away, right? And having closed adoptions, because people don't think about this. People think about, oh, we're terminating the parents' rights, but we're terminating children's rights to their roots, to their family, and thinking that it's just going to make them okay. Like, it's not. And if there's medical doctors saying that taking a child away, even from an abusive home, is very traumatic, why are we doing child welfare in this way? It's not child welfare. There's nothing welfare about it. But thank you for that.
Marianne, you
Yeah. Thank you, Tatiana. I had some issues with my computer and internet, so I was off and on, and you might have mentioned this, but I see you and your passion. Is there a team of you, others like yourself, that are working together to be able to support these families?
Yeah, so unfortunately right now, I'm the only one that is able to do this full time because of funding.
Yes.
Like I said to you, funding's a big issue, especially getting people to fund this type of work, because you have the funding for, like I said, the youth, but people don't really believe in parents like that, right? There is a lot of growing advocacy efforts around supporting families, supporting people with lived experience now. So we're seeing things change. The needle change a little. Like I said, the funding towards parent advocacy program within the CPCS offices. So we see parents in that light, but as far as grassroots, they're not really, so my network, to be honest, I'm a part of like different task force. I'm a part of a repeal CAPTA group where we do advocacy on a federal level. And I have connections with other parents in different states that are doing the same work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Here, I just really have parent advocates that I've trained, but because I value their time, I would never ever make them, you know, I try to like get folks to support one another because that was a part of my defense. I started doing participatory defense and I wanted to bring that model over to family defense, but I realized that people are facing so much trauma when it comes. It's one thing when you're dealing with a criminal charge as an adult, but it's another thing when you're dealing with trying to get your kids because when you birth your kids, you're here to protect them. And it's unnatural to take that right from you. So I think that getting parents to like show up like that on that level is kind of hard because they're navigating their own situations. I really feel blessed that I was able to fight for my child while helping other parents, but it's not that easy.
No, no.
Kristen,
Yeah, thank you for that.
Kristen, you had your hand up.
Yes, I do have a quick question. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much, Tatiana, for coming on here and being vulnerable and sharing your truth. And I just like really respect you a lot. And I do follow you on socials and all things. So I see what you're doing out there. And I really, really appreciate it. I'm also a mother in long-term recovery and support a lot of parents in this situation with the Department of Children and Families. I was just hoping that you may be able to share a little bit about your support groups with everybody on the call, because I think that might be a great resource for people.
Sure. Okay, so we meet every week, every Thursday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. on Thursdays. We are actually going to start to have clinicians come on to help folks with coping skills. And then we also meet right now, we have a bi-weekly working group that's actually working on drafting the legislation. So if you guys have any parents that have, or any former foster kids that have lived experience, that want to come and share their insight, or just like, if you want to come and be a part of it, like it's an open group. That group is open for like anybody that wants to work on advocacy. We have attorneys there that are tired of stuff of the system. We have child advocates that have been, social workers actually doing this work and doing the type of work that you all do. So you guys are welcome to come if you want to come see what that's about, and support that legislation. So those are the two things that we have going on. And that's kind of a way we empower parents too, to like use their pain for purpose, right? Like they feel like they're doing something because a lot of the times they're like, I want to do something. We got to change the system. So it's like, that's kind of what we give them to make them, because I know that was a part of my journey. Like me, it was healing for me, right? Like knowing that I was changing a larger system and helping other families. Thank you for your question.
So I don't know if I have a question, more of a comment, like all of the things that you spoke about. I have a best friend who went through that and is going through that now with her son. And it seems like DCF can get like very vindictive. She years ago asked for support. They didn't come in, because of something that was going into the household. She called them and asked them for help. And then once she let them in, they turned the scenario around on her, took the children out of the household. And she was asking for help because at a very young age, they were displaying, substance use disorder. And they took the children out of the house. And then one of the children, she noticed, was displaying like strange behavior in the foster home that she was in, and she kept complaining to them. And there was some stuff going on, as you can imagine, in the foster home, and she ended up shutting down the house, getting the house shut down. But then 10 years later, one of the, one of her children has a child,
Mm,
and now it seems like, they've pulled that information, uh,
mm-hmm,
has placed the child, with the other grandparents, has giving really no access to him, even though he's 18 months sober. He only has 2-hour visits with this child. So,
mm.
and the child is still up, like they're still going on track with having, going up for adoption.
That's the ASPA. So that's the law that is that moves for permanency, and it's just not fair. So all the things that you said, Julie, is exactly why the education, right, is so important. um I don't know who has, the power to, like, do things and stuff, like people, I just finished a research study between myself and Boston University, where we were researching mandated reporting in schools and IEPs. And those like, a lot of people don't know where to go, and they go to DCF and they think that DCF is there to help, because they say Department of Children and Families, like they make it sound so good, and that's not really that's not their business model. Like, they
So,
say that's their business model, and it's not. And intergenerationally, you said it went from mom asking for services, right? She needed support, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't have to punish parents for that. And the thing with that is, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. I remember volunteering for services myself, very young, because of DV, and I allowed them to put a neglect on me. Didn't know that that would be on my record. So when I try to help my get custody of my niece, when her mother had like a schizophrenic episode, they were holding that against me, despite the fact I was an educator working for Boston public schools, despite the fact that I had custody of my child and my son was safe. So this is the system that we're talking about here.
so my question is if this is, this happened to her, we're talking 10 or more years ago,
Hmm.
how do you move the needle with them? Because it doesn't seem like they're very antiquated, and it doesn't seem like they're
So you
moving.
got to get eyes. You got to get eyes on them. You if you want to connect them to me, I can be added to their, like, one of their providers. And if they participate in, like, support groups and stuff like that, I can write letters for them. But it's all about getting eyes. And one thing about it, my organization is small, but we are mighty. The name is mighty, and they don't like to see us coming, because when I tell you, we show up for we show up for hearings. Like, legislators know my story. Like, legislators know my parents' stories. We're all over social media. We doing. This is my second documentary. The first one was with Northeastern. This is the second one. So they don't like when they could give pushback, but ultimately I hold them to their policy. Like today, for example, I was like, what's going on? It doesn't sound like we're making reasonable efforts here. If this father still hasn't lost his rights, you know, we're working for reunification. Why is it that this is becoming so difficult? I added the ombudsman to the email chain, and I said, Jennifer, can you please advise what their policy is on this? And I put it purposely so that they can see that I CC'd the ombudsman, right? So she switched her whole response. Now she's being nice. She's like, oh, well, we just, we need releases so that he can be able to do the visitation center on Saturdays, right? Even though that's not enough, because technically he should be allowed to do a community visit. If we're talking about, we're still working on reunification, right? And then another thing is, they want to do home visits. If we're not working on reunification and there's no goal of the baby coming home, why are we doing a home visit? What do you need to come be intrusive for? Mind your business, right?
And
Unless we're talking
actually,
about reunification. Yeah.
and actually what they did do, and I'll stop with this, is he was in a sober home where he felt very comfortable, and it's always been the goal is adoption, which, he's been saying that, he doesn't want it, but they said, okay, well, we need you to move out of the sober home and move to your mother's house. Then
What?
when he moved to his mother's house, she was actually getting visits with the baby, but then when he moved to his mother's house, she could no longer have visits.
Yeah,
That's
see,
awful.
and that's the problem.
That's
So that's
terrible.
the problem. And I will tell you that there is, if you look up, I can try to send you the link, but there's a program through DCF where if the parent is homeless, houseless, they have a program where they could provide a Section 8 voucher, by the way.
They didn't help him find housing.
Yeah, so he needs to request a housing specialist.
Okay.
He should request a housing specialist because they have housing specialists in DCF. Because the social workers, they like to do everything. They don't want to give any information that's going to help parents, right? They want to put all these barriers, especially if they're looking for adoption, because they get incentives for adoption.
Yeah, I
so
know
they get
it.
money for adopting, and once the adoption is final, they get another like $20,000. So they get money for that. So yeah, so this is ASFA, Julie. I see your face. This is Julie Foster. This is the ASFA thing that you guys should look up. But yeah, so just you can just take my contact and connect me to him. Yeah. And I have another father that actually has an organization called Nurturing Fathers. So he's being retaliated against through DCF for advocating for parents. He was actually a provider for them. He was doing trainings for them and everything. They took away his badge because now, he's doing the work.
Wow.
So this is why it's hard to get funding from the state, because it's like you're stepping up and fighting back to your abuser, which is the state ultimately, right? And they don't want you politically. Like, that's why CPCS can only do so much. And attorneys that support me, they have to do it behind the scenes, and they have to do it as private citizens, because CPCS, when you work for the state, is very political. They're the same people that pay DCF.
Well, I just got two quick questions because my hand was up. But Tatiana,
I didn't see it, Denise.
Yeah, it's up. That's okay. Tatiana, how long does something like that stay on someone's
record?
Yeah.
I believe it's somewhere between 8 to 10 years.
Are you serious?
It might be longer. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But parents have the right to fair hearing, right? So if they get found, this is another thing that DCF doesn't tell them. They have a right to a fair hearing. So let's say if they investigate, they do a 51B, do a removal, they have a right to appeal that decision. They have a right to appeal any finding of neglect or abuse. They have a right to appeal it. Wow. And we have attorneys that do that.
Wow, that's so awful. It's almost kind of like that's a big barrier for children.
Yeah, and then we don't have attorneys.
Family may have had like some addiction or whatever in the past, but they've been like maybe in recovery for over 20 years, or they're like ready to take their grandkids, they're working, they have a nice home, all that stuff. And then that comes up and they deny them from even getting their family, when it's like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? It's been 20 years and you're still going to hold that against them? Like, there should be some kind of statute.
Well, this is the legacy of slavery, like we said. This is the legacy of slavery that we're still dealing with today. We're still dealing with policing systems that want to separate the Black family. And let me tell you something, it is a way to get people to, just like they got slaves to cooperate and they threatened them with separation, right? They do the same thing to us. They say, if you don't do this, we're going to take your kid. And then even when you do it, they still take your kid. Even when you, like you said, Julie, they told him to move into his mother's house as if that was supposed to do something. Instead, they put in further punishment and they took away visits. It's like, if they can't surveil you and control you, then they, this is what they do. Wow. Daniel, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple. Thank you, first of all. You're very courageous. And sadly, this late in history, you're a pioneer. This DCF and all the child welfare system has been broken for a very, very long time. And that's the other legacy, right? Or that's the other intergenerational problem that we have to change the paradigm. We have to change the system. It needs to be reinvented. And it's these battles that you fight. I hope to hear your voice more in more places. And I'd like to talk to the people I work with because I think we'd like to have you come and speak, which would be really great because I think I work with a lot of people that live in group living environments that have children that they are estranged from because of what they're dealing with. So I think you're very brave, and I'm right next to you. So
And
thank you very
for
much.
that. Thank you for that comment. But I will say this, Daniel. It isn't broken. It's designed. It's operating exactly how it was designed to operate. So we need to burn the whole shit down. Excuse my language, right? We need to burn it down because there's other ways to care for families. Just like if you go to Wellesley and you go to all these suburban neighborhoods, they don't have DCF. They don't have those. The closest DCF to Dedham is the one in the Hyde Park office, right? So they don't have DCF in these places. They're not over policing. You have people that are you have children that are actually being molested, that are being abused, right? But it's being covered up. Why? Because it's a family response. People with resources come in. If it's a substance issue, they get, shipped out to Florida or somewhere nice to recover, right? Nicely. Sometimes they could even bring their children with them because there's, ultimately, I think there needs to be more substance use centers. And I always say this, where it's child friendly because I went through trauma seeing my mother hurting herself, so I had to heal with her, and I was a part of Latinas y Niños. And I remember being able to heal with my mother, right? And being able to see her getting clean and going through that and knowing that she was okay and not being further harmed and further traumatized by being taken from her. So I think that we need to just reimagine and not be scared. The problem is people move off of fear. When you have mandated reporters are moving off of fear. Then what's even scarier is that most of the time, if you look at calls, like I don't have the numbers right now, but most calls end up being screened out. So that means mandated reporters are not even experts to be calling and saying that they suspect abuse or allegation. When most of the time it's a kid's coming to school with dirty clothes or may not have enough diapers if he's still wearing diapers and he's autistic, right? Because I dealt with those things as an educator. I had to intervene and say, hey, whoa. Did you call the parent? Did you call the parent to find out first before you assume that this is what's happening? Why don't you ask certain questions? We need to vet this before you call anything in. And then you come to find out that this parent actually, in fact, is dealing with poverty-related issues in a homeless shelter, just migrated from another country and just needed diapers. So we bought the kid diapers. We didn't have to file a 51A for that. We didn't have to get the family police involved and have this family dealing with more systems when they're just trying to merely find a way to survive, right? And have stability. So it's like we have all these policing agents when we go to the doctors, when we go to get welfare, right? You have people questioning you, asking you questions, right? So it's like we have so many policing agents. So we need to get back to a time and a world where we're not policing inner cities. Let's all, just how we deal with things in Wellesley and these suburbs and how churches get involved and how community and family gets involved without the consequence of having to be, oh, let's look up their record. Oh, they was involved with DCF 20 years ago. Oh, scratch that. Let's give this to this lesbian couple that wants to adopt children that they can't have kids. So here, let's give it to them. That's not fear. You know what I'm saying? With all due respect to the LGBTQ, has nothing to do with that. But it's just ultimately there's parents that voluntarily give their kids up, right? Let's stop taking kids away from foster systems and adopting them out because y'all have a shortage of and you want to make money off of these kids, because that's really what's happening. That's what it's becoming, especially in this epidemic right now where we have, you know, these people, and ultimately children belong to their parents, period, regardless of what issues they come with. We need to start supporting parents. And you know, there's so many stories. It's just unfortunate, and I know you guys probably know of families too that have lost parental rights, especially when it comes to substance use. Because I mean, I know my mother currently still struggling to this day, you know, but she's a great mother. So it's like, why is a substance test a parent test? It's not. It's just not a parenting test. Sorry, I'm just very passionate about this. Does anybody else have any questions?
Okay, I think we're gonna end this for tonight, Tatiana, but I would
Okay.